I do not want to die. I don't want to die. James kept repeating as he sat panicked in the back seat, the shadow inching its way towards town, while we sped down the road in desperate attempt to reach safety before it was too late. James was in shock, and while I could have given him a few words of comfort, I sensed that he needed something to swiftly bring him back to reality. Without warning, I turned around and slapped him firmly on his cheek. He immediately snapped back to attention and said, "What was that for?" His voice was still shaky, but at least he was a little focused now. I said, "Need to break you away from your hysteria. I mean, it's a crude method, I know, but it worked, didn't it?" He nodded, still shook but thankful. I peeked out through the back window of our speeding car, watching as the darkness grew ever closer at an accelerated pace. "This hasn't happened before, right?" I half-asked, half-stated. Riley didn't even respond. His eyes were fixed on the road and his hands grasping the steering wheel in a mix of panic and determination. Just as town came into view, a massive wall of darkness shut into the road, cutting our lane off completely. "Watch out," James yelled. But it was futile. Riley swerved away from the darkness onto the other lane, causing the car to spin uncontrollably before putting us at an abrupt stop only a few feet away from the dark. "No, no, no. Just keep driving," James yelled as the shadow started enveloping the car. Small tendrils slithered their way through cracks in the window, wrapping around James. I said, "Oh God, help me," before I could even try to pull him away. The tendrils dug their way into his chest and abdomen. His blood-curdling screams of agony quickly faded as his throat filled with blood, and within seconds he could do little but writhe around hopelessly and whimper in pain. I fumbled around for the flashlights and I pointed it at the window. The shadow immediately retreated back out, retracting from the light. Then I yelled, "The headlights! The headlights, everyone!" Riley had already reached out to turn the high beams on. The bright light shoved the shadows away, just long enough for us to make a swift escape. "James, are you all right?" That's what I asked. He didn't respond. He just sat motionless in his seat, eyes wide open and lifeless. "James!" Riley chimed in. He's dead," I said as I checked his pulse. I thought about performing CPR, but his abdomen just seemed sunken in, as if he'd simply been hollowed out by the shadow. And with no time to stop, we let James' corpse sit there while we made out our way into town, leaving nothing but a tiny opening of light as the void surrounded us. And in the center, we were met by a small group of survivors. They'd put up a perimeter of bonfires and powerful searchlights, though it seemed to keep the shadows at bay. Silvers of darkness still tried to absorb the light, dimming it second by second. Then we stopped the car and bolted out, leaving James' lifeless body behind. An older man, who I recognized as the nameless driver, met us with a strong flashlight and gestured for us to follow. "George, thank God. How many people made it?" Riley asked. Then he said, "We've got about a dozen setting up a barrier, while the rest are scavenging for supplies. But we ain't got long. We need to get inside the station," he said. It was a chaotic retreat back into the sheriff's department. There wasn't the safest place to be. It was the only building not yet consumed by the dark. As we ran inside the building, something emerged from the edge of the shadow wall, just looming on the border. "What's that?" Riley asked. It was one of the things I'd seen wander in the dark, the beings that kept me trapped within my pantry for weeks. "It's them. It's the creatures I saw," I yelled in panic, as George and Riley both instinctively put their flashlights towards it, and the shadow quickly retreated back to the dark. But before it did, the true horrific nature of the being revealed itself. They weren't shadows, but mangled messes of flesh and human organs held together by an unseen force. It was as if someone had created a poor reconstruction of a person, having nothing more than guts and muscles to work with. Riley immediately said, "What the hell are these things?" voice as he was yelling out loud. I responded saying, I don't know, but let's keep them the fuck away. We mounted a few searchlights on the outside of the building and lit a few fires before barricading the doors to the station. How long till the dark goes away? I asked, knowing in my heart what the answer would be. I did not think it well. Not this time, George said quietly. The darkness kept growing closer, slowly consuming the light and breaking through our barricade. Is there any way out of town? I asked. Only the main road, but it does not matter. We cannot leave this place now. Do you have any better suggestions? I asked. It's only a matter of time before the breakthrough, and once they do, we're all gonna die. Riley kept quiet for a moment while he pondered his response. The others had collected any weapons and lights they could find to keep the shadows at bay, but it could do little more than to buy us a few hours. Though we had an overabundance of food and ammunition, electricity was a scarce resource. How long can we keep this place running? Riley asked. Without anyone to run the power stations, we would have about 12 hours, George responded. Sorry, Sheriff. I think this is it for us. I looked at him in disbelief that he'd give up so easily without a fight. No, we can't just give up. Listen, I saw at least 3 patrol cars outside. We could mount lights to them and at least attempt to escape, I argued. They looked at me without saying a word. There was something they weren't telling me. A reason why they were so willing to just surrender. We can't leave, Riley finally said. I said, why the fuck not? He said, since you got to Tenebris, have you seen any children? I said the population had seemed to be on the older side, even though I'd only been there for a day. Before the darkness first arrived, I hadn't seen any kids, nor schools, kindergartens, or even families. Riley sighed. 50 years ago, we had our first bout of darkness. At first, it was nothing more than an oddity we couldn't explain, something we just accepted as a weird phenomenon. Then people started disappearing, always in the dark, never to be found again. He trailed off. A shatter was heard from outside, jolting us all to attention. Through the window, we could see a few glimmers of light vanishing as one of the searchlights broke down. Time was literally running out. Of course, once we were hit with the horrors that lurked in the dark, people tried to leave. The thing is that something had happened to the population here, those that were born here, those that spent too much time in town. They became bound to the place, finding themselves physically incapable of leaving. Those that ignored their instincts, those who tried to leave anyway, simply vanished without a trace. And what about the kids? I asked. But then he said eventually we decided to just stop bringing more people into this nightmare, as the last child was born 20 years ago, and he was my son. And as he finished the last sentence, a mixed feeling of anger and pity filled me. Then I said, why didn't you ask for help? He said, trust me, we tried. But who would believe us? We brought in detectives from different cities, hoping they'd see the darkness. They'd finally help us, but none ever did until you came. Another shatter sounded outside as broken glass fell to the ground, and more of the flesh-bound shadows emerged from the dark. So that's it then? You're just giving up? I asked. After an uncomfortably long moment of silence, George finally spoke up. Sheriff, how about the pillar? He asked. Don't be ridiculous, Riley shot back. Wait, what pillar? I joined in. It's the source of the darkness. George, this isn't the time for your stories. Just do not. I understand your trepidation in going there, Sheriff, but we ain't got any other option. You don't even know where it is. No one does, Riley asked. Then he responded by saying no. But I don't know where my father, brother, and your son were last seen. I'll lead the search, but I cannot do it alone. By then, everyone had fallen completely silent, and as confused as I was, I felt a hint of hope awakening within me. What exactly are we gonna do? I asked. Riley turned to me and sighed. We're going to destroy the darkness. To be continued.